Today on Sports Central, we'll be going over our next 2020 schedule preview, and it's going to be over the Texas A&M Aggies. And this was a team that overall had a pretty good 2019 season, but overall, I mean, it could have been a little bit disappointing as well, considering Texas A&M had a ton of returning talent. But then again, this Texas A&M schedule for the 2019 season was absolutely brutal. But how will they do in 2020 is what we're going over here today. We'll be going over a few players this team will be losing, who they're going to be returning, and also we'll be going over their schedule for the first time this offseason. Starting off with the games that this team has had since November. They beat UTSA on November 2nd, 45-14, easy win there. They also had an easy win against South Carolina, 30-6. And then they lost to Georgia on the road only by 6. So really, honestly, that is not all that terrible of a loss at all, especially since Georgia's a very talented team, and also they're a tough home team as well. So overall, that really isn't all that bad. But the next game against LSU, that was a blowout. That was a pretty terrible game that Texas A&M fans, I'm sure you want to forget. But they lost 7-50 in that game. But they were able to follow that up with a pretty good bowl win against Oklahoma State. They ended up winning that 24-21. And looking at the trend for Texas A&M over the season, they started out 5-3 from September to October, and then they finished off 3-2. So overall, once again, not an all terrible season. I mean, they went 8-5, which, I mean, that's a pretty good record. They were a little bit in contention at one point for this division. I mean, I thought in the offseason from the 2018 offseason, I was thinking Texas A&M could potentially be a big dark horse playoff contender, but once again, this schedule for Texas A&M last season was absolutely brutal, no doubt about it. I mean, they had to play Clemson as their second game of the season, and then you have a tough SEC schedule to go with that. It was tough for Texas A&M last year. Here's some key points for this team. They returned quarterback Kellen Mond for his senior season, so that is really good. His stats from last season, he had over 2,800 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. So overall, not all that bad of a season, but the touchdown-interception ratio needs to be improved. I mean, 20 touchdowns is pretty good, but 9 interceptions, if you could lower that number a little bit, that'd be huge for this team especially. But they returned their top running back, Isaiah Spiller, as well, and he was very important to this team. He had over 1,000 yards, over 1,100 yards for that matter, and he also had 10 touchdowns. They returned their top wide receiver to Jamon Osman. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but he had over 800 yards and 5 touchdowns. So, this team has a ton of potential, especially with the quarterback, running back, and wide receivers. No doubt about that at all. They do lose their second and third wide receivers, Courtney Davis and Kendrick Rogers. Both of those wide receivers had a decent impact on this team. They combined for over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns along with that. But overall, I think they'll be just fine with Jamon. He had a really good season, and he's also their top wide receiver. So expect them to get a lot of action going into next season. They return their important tight end, Jalen. I'm not even going to pronounce that last name, but nonetheless, he had 447 yards and 6 touchdowns. So, yeah, he's very important to this team as well. So that's going to be really good for Kellen Mond to be able to return his top wide receiver and his important tight end, of course, in Jalen. They do lose one on the offensive line. So other than that, really this offense doesn't lose a whole lot at all. And then this defense is only losing 2 starters, 1 defensive tackle, and also 1 cornerback. So that is huge, having only 1 loss, especially in the secondary. Possible SEC contender for Texas A&M. Honestly, no doubt about it in my mind. I think that Texas A&M is going to be a team that you really got to watch out for next season. That's kind of what I thought last season. I really thought that the 2019 season was going to be their year. And overall, once again, this tough schedule really got to them there. But overall, once again, it was a really good season for Texas A&M, no doubt about it. And nonetheless, here is your schedule. This is the first time we're going to be looking at the schedule for the first time this offseason for Texas A&M. And of course, start off the season with Abilene Christian at home on September 5th. Really shouldn't be all that tough of a game there. They also play North Texas on September 12th. So you get 2 pretty easy games right off the bat. And then you face Colorado at home. So that's a rematch of Big 12 opponents, if you remember that. And then they face Arkansas the following week in a neutral location. So really, I could easily see Texas A&M getting off to a 4-0 start. They face Mississippi State then the next week on the road. If you can get past that game and you get past Fresno State, this is a 6-0 team heading into a very tough second half of the season. They play Auburn on October 17th. That will be a very tough game. Auburn's going to be good next year. And then South Carolina and Ole Miss along with Vanderbilt. Those 3 games are very winnable. But that South Carolina one could be a bit of a problem with it being on the road. And I also think South Carolina's got a lot of potential too going into next year, so you got to watch out for that. But nonetheless, you have the next couple weeks, Ole Miss and Vanderbilt. Then you finish off the season with 2 bangers, Alabama on the road and LSU at home. And I think Texas A&M could very well win against either Alabama or LSU next season. I think they will beat one of those teams. I'm not sure which one. And I'll go over more about that once we go over Texas A&M once again in the summer for our actual prediction. But nonetheless, here's what I'm expecting right now. And those in green are my projected wins, and those are the ones that I think are going to be the most obvious ones, the most lopsided towards Texas A&M. And I think that you're going to beat Abilene Christian and North Texas pretty easily, same as Arkansas and Fresno State. And then I'm going to add Vanderbilt on there as well. So, 5 pretty easy wins there. And as for the record estimation, I'm going to keep it between 9-3 and 10-2. I think that you could easily hang around 9 to 10 wins. I would not be surprised at all to see Texas A&M get 11 wins next season. But of course, I mean, there are 3 tough games. They're going to be Auburn, Alabama, and LSU. So if you can beat 2 of those opponents, I could easily see Texas A&M going to 11-1. But once again, it is very early on to be talking about that. We are only in late January right now. So we're going to be going over this team, though, once again in the summer. Stay tuned for that. But nonetheless, let me know your early thoughts on Texas A&M in the comments below. Let me know what you think as their record is going to be. Of course, once again, very early on. We just do the schedule previews to just show you like who these teams are losing, who they're going to be returning as well. And it can kind of give you a basic outlook on what the team is going to look like for the next season. But nonetheless, thank you guys all for watching. Stay tuned for more for All Sports Central. That's the schedule previews coming out right now. And I will see you all later.